everybody.
8:11 is the time in the studios of Q95 FM radio. We're coming back in just a while for tonight's In the Spotlight radio show. Keep it locked.
In the Spotlight, featuring people from all walks of Dominican life, spotlighting their triumphs and tragedies, dreams, hopes, aspirations, untold stories, touching the human and personal side of our people in politics, religion, sports, business, music, culture, the media, and more. Getting to know our farmers, our public servants, youth, and the ordinary Dominican. Listen to their stories. No limitations, no restrictions, no holds barred. In the Spotlight will also spotlight interesting topics, issues, and relevant situations. Don't miss In the Spotlight on Q95 FM radio every Monday nights from 8 p.m. In the Spotlight.
All right, we are ready to roll. 15 minutes past the 8 o'clock hour on another beautiful Monday night in the nature island of the world. This is the In the Spotlight radio show. As we say good evening to you wherever you are at this time, in whatever part of the world you are. I wonder what time it is in Japan. If you're in Japan, it might be morning or maybe afternoon. Yeah, thereabout, right? Yes, morning, I was told. Welcome, welcome to tonight's program. We have an interesting guest for you. I'm quite intrigued about quite a few things about this guest, and I look forward to learning all there is to learn from him. And you know, a program, there is always an element of inspiration. And I'm sure we're going to get some of that tonight as well on the program. Wonderful program last week with Sheldon Shelley. And, you know, the feedback has really been good. And we thank all those who tuned in last week for that program. Acknowledging Josephine Gabriel and the Company Limited for providing us with our Twapito water. So when you're looking for water, for any occasion, you need bottled water, you go to Josephine Gabriel and the Company Limited. and they will definitely take care of you. I don't have barefoot wine tonight, but I'll big up their barefoot wine as well. They've been very good to me at Josephine Gabriel and Company Limited. And thank you, Jenny, and the rest of the team. We say thank you and acknowledge as well Pamplemousse Goodies and Services. We thank and appreciate you in a very big way. You've been providing us with goodie boxes from, I think, late April up till now. And I just want to say to Ronald Astafan, thank you. And I wish you continued success with your business. And I ask those of you who see me post all the time on social media to make sure that you place your orders. He also sends out, orders for his weekend meals that he offers. He calls them comfort food. So look out for those and place your order as well. We have gotten our goodie boxes for tonight, and I'm so excited because there's some stuff that's in there. Ronald, you just know how to rub me the right way, the very, very right way with those goodie boxes. I mean, last week's goodie box was just heaven, and tonight, really, really appreciative of the goodie boxes that you continue to provide. Don't know for how long. If you do take a break, it's quite understandable because I know you have to live all the way where you are to get those down to me and for me and my guests, and it's really, really deeply appreciated. So big up yourself, Ronald, and your team, who make this available for me and my guests so far. And as well, we have to big up the folks at the Great Old House. My good friend Steve. Steve, good evening to you. I'm learning that my guest may be a relative, so that's exciting to me as well. And Steve, that dinner is usually so delicious, finger licking, really, really good food. And people know I'm a foodie, so when they hear me speak like that, a resounding yes, I am a foodie. And I love good food, and that's what you get from the Great Old House for fine dining. So when you're looking for somewhere, Father's Day is coming up, definitely the Great Old House is somewhere that you can take Dad for lunch. I suspect it's going to be lunch available on that day and dinner as well. So folks, just wanted to big up those folks and Q95 as well. Thank you for your support. Everyone who provides support in some way or the other, we really, really do appreciate you. We're getting ready to go to tonight's program, and our guest tonight is, wow, I mean, I don't know how he's been able to fit all of this in his 60 plus years on this planet. I'll say 60 plus. 68, are we? 63. So he's giving me permission. You can actually say my age. In his 63 years on planet Earth. And so, guys, it's a pleasure for me tonight to introduce on the program, to welcome on the program, Dr. McDonald Thomas, better known as TC, and that's how I know him. I know him as TC. I don't even remember how exactly we met, TC. Did I come to buy some tires at your shop? Do you remember?
I remember you needed some parts for your Honda Integra back then.
I did have a Honda. You remember that?
Yes, I remember that. Yeah, and you came and you spoke to me about it to help you get some parts for your car.
And here I am again getting some more parts from you. Oh my goodness.
That was over a decade ago.
More than a decade ago, because even after the Integra, I had a Prelude.
Yeah.
Yes, that I got from Eddie Toulon after he passed. I think I got Eddie Toulon's car. So it's been a while. But it's been a pleasure though. You're such the gentleman, and I really appreciate knowing you. And even when I reached out to you some time ago, and that's not the reason why you're on the program, we actually spoke about this program
a couple years ago.
Yes. And you were very, very kind in assisting me with that, and I appreciate it. So good evening to you, Dr. Thomas. We'll throw in the TC ever so often because it's the TC I'm more familiar with. So good evening to you and welcome.
Well, good evening to you too, and the millions of listeners you have on
That's right. All the way in Japan too.
All the way.
Right.
Yeah. So good evening. Nice to be here with you. You mentioned we've talked about this for quite a while.
Yes.
And I've already been looking forward to being on your program. It's a very nice program. A lot of information, listening to people's stories and their failures and the successes, most of all, and what they had to endure to get to where they are. So I'm looking forward to the program and listening to what you have to ask me.
Yes, definitely, and you responding as well. Anyone who's listening that you just want to reach out to?
Oh yeah, well, I'll say good evening to my family and good evening to the Wesley people in Wesley, and especially to the people of the Wesley Constituency Association. I know they're locked in. Interestingly enough, on my way here, this lady at Ruby's gas station in Castle Comfort said, "Be sure to say hello to Sandra when you get on the program tonight." But all the way in Texas, we have Kevin listening, and all my family on the family chat, they are listening. So just want to say good evening to each and everyone that's listening. My employees, for sure, they're locked in. So definitely the executive of the United Workers Party, I know they're locked in. So good evening to all of you.
And I suspect that many of them are going to be learning some new things about you tonight.
I suspect that.
I suspect so. So TC, let's begin by understanding your heritage. Where is TC from?
I was born in Cottage. My mom is from Cottage. And back then, a lot of parents, when they wanted to travel, they left their kids with relatives. At 3 years old, my mom actually left me with my father's aunt, which was my grand aunt. Name was Albertine Benjamin, but I call her Nenen. So if I refer to Nenen, that's who I'm referring to. So I moved to Wesley and lived with her. When she took me in Wesley, she looked at me and she, for some reason, said I looked like her brother, which was named TC, T-I-C-Y. And so she started calling me TC.
So that's where the TC came from. Because I was trying to figure it out. TC, your name is McDonald Thomas, MT. So where did that TC originate from?
That's where it came from. And that's 90% of the people who know me, probably a greater percentage, know me only for TC. Because I went through school in Wesley with that name, and so that's the name I've had all my life. I have no problems with it, and I like it actually. So everybody calls me TC.
So where was Mom?
Mom went to St. Croix, and what she did, she had 4 of us, and she went to St. Croix, and I lived with Nenen, and my older brother stayed in Cottage for a while, then he moved with me to Wesley. My sister, who lived in Ansdime, my sister lived in Ansdime, and my younger brother actually stayed in Cottage with his grandmother. So my sister moved to Ansdime with our uncle. And then once my mother got settled into St. Croix and got her documentation squared away, then she started sending for us to St. Croix one by one. So my older brother went up first, and then my younger brother, then I went up, and then my sister came up. So we all left. I left in 1978 to go up to St. Croix. So that's how I ended up with my mother and away from Dominica.
What about Mr. Thomas?
My father, my father was in England, and I did not get to know him till I was 13 years old.
13?
Yes, I was actually going into PSS at the time. I was in high school, secondary school at the time when he came back from England. And so he came back, and we had, because I didn't know him at all, so we had a kind of a rough start.
Had you seen pictures or anything?
I saw pictures of him, well, probably a picture.
A picture.
of him.
Yes. No telephone call,
No
nothing?
telephone call. We had no car.
No contact.
No contact.
For 13 years of your life.
13 years, yeah. So he came. I didn't know him until he
Tell me
actually
about
came.
the encounter.
He came from England, and it's interesting because when he got here, I knew my father was here, and everybody said, hey, your father's coming back from England. And he had a car, and he actually took myself and my older brother, who were both in Wesley at the time, to spend some time with him in Port Cassay. And up to this day, I can't figure out why we went there, whose place it was, why we were there. But we spent about, I think it was about a week or two we spent in Port Cassay, and then we came back. He's a mechanic by trade, and that's what he did in England.
Okay.
So he did a little bit of mechanic after he came back, and I love machines. So I spent a little time with him, and then he went deep into farming.
Okay.
And there's one thing I can confess, I am not a farmer. I can use a fork, I can use the cutlass semi, but I am definitely not a farmer. So I spent some time with him, and but we didn't really mesh that well. I would say I was going to school and in Portsmouth, and so he was doing his thing, I was doing my thing. So we didn't really have.
So you didn't get to build that father-son bond type of relationship.
No, we didn't have that. We didn't have that. The closest relationship I had was with Nenen, and in fact, most people thought I was a son because every time I came back, I would meet people who say, all Miss Albertine is how people refer to her. All Miss Albertine talk about is TC. Everything is TC. So people just assumed that I was a son.
Tell me about Nenen.
Nenen was a tough woman. She was tough, I'm telling you. She worked harder than a lot of men work today. In fact, she had a garden below, well, we say farm right now, but she had one below the house. She had one across the street in a place called Bonham. She had one in Hunt, and she had one in Button, and then she had a farm in Over River.
5
farms. And then she had a swamp in Cribo. So, and she farmed, non-stop. So when they called bananas on Thursdays, which they usually do, we would have to cut bananas below the house, carry them to Bonham, then leave the following day, go up to Button, cut in Button, then come down to Hunt, cut in Hunt. And at those times, they had Bedford trucks. So we would have a whole Bedford truck loaded with bananas. And she did 90% of the work.
Wow.
Occasionally she had people come to work with her, but she did that. She was a great cook. She was a tough cookie. I'm telling you. She didn't take no nonsense from nobody. What was interesting was she could actually read and write pretty well. She passed away at 97, and her dad passed away at 98. So I'm hoping to follow in their footsteps.
Definitely.
But she was a tough person. Great cook, hard worker, very, very hard worker.
Lessons from Nenen.
Work hard. And she used to say that if you don't work hard, you can't eat. She worked hard, and she made sure you learned. You learned things about life. Yeah. One thing I don't ever remember her saying, TC, I love you. People look for that these days, and they want. She has never said that, but she showed it in every way, because everybody, like I said, who spoke about her always said I was all she spoke about. But she, I think, built within me a desire to work. She built within me, like, I can cook for myself, I can iron my clothes, I cannot farm, but I can plant a little thing, so anything that I need to do to sustain myself. I remember she used to come from the garden, and she would walk on the linoleum carpets we had in the houses, and she would take off her shoes and move her foot on the floor. And if there was dirt on the floor, she would start yelling at me because I would have to sweep the house.
Right.
And she expected dinner cooked when she got from the farm, from the garden. So.
And you did that?
I did that. Yeah.
She taught you?
She taught me. I had to, on Saturday nights when the young guys my age were out walking around, we had to bake bread for Sunday morning. She killed her old animals. She could kill a pig, she could kill a sheep, she could kill a goat, she could kill a chicken. She did all of that by herself. And even to neuter animals, she did it. She was
It's a sacrifice.
she was a tough cookie, I'm telling you. She was strong, a very, very strong woman, very determined. And some people say mean, but I think she was just a forceful person.
So I know you said you're not a farmer, and you mentioned we would have to. So what role did you play in supporting Nenen in her farming venture?
Carrying bananas. Had to carry the bananas, had to carry the coconuts. She also had a copra house. So we had to help her with the copra, bring on the coconut, break the coconuts and put them in the copra, make sure we kept the fire going. So she had a swamp, of course, so I used to go to the swamp. And
the swamp was for dashing?
Was for dashing.
Yes, yes.
So you had a stick, you just push it in the ground, wiggle it around and push the dashing plant in there. That I could do.
Okay.
And I did.
Okay.
And help her in the swamp is easy to harvest the dashing, so we would do that. And I didn't like it because the dashing always scratched me. So maybe that's why I don't like dashing so much today.
I love Nenen.
Yeah, but
it's a woman I would love to know, to meet and to just sit down, and I can imagine the things she would be saying to me.
Yeah, and she had a lot of life stories, which is kind of strange. She told a lot of it to other people who would relate to me, but she didn't really tell me those stories, which is, I guess I lost a lot of those.
Did she have children?
She had no children.
Oh.
What she did was take a lot of children from other people and raise them. She, both myself, my older brother, my sister, she raised us, and for some time, even my dad, before he went to England, he lived with her. There was a lady from Castle Bruce, Harriet, who was with her for a while. She probably raised at least 10 to 15 children. Yes.
Well, even if someone might have thought that she was mean, this lady had a good heart.
Oh yeah. And she wasn't poor per se. I cannot say I grew up poor, because she was selling all these bananas and she had all this produce, so she had income. I think we were probably one of the first people in the village with one of those voice recorders and actually a record player.
Yes.
We had all those things, and I don't remember ever going out to the fireside and blowing. We always had a stove of some sort. So we weren't rich, but we weren't dirt poor growing up. So.
Where were you when she passed, and how did you deal with her passing?
I was actually, she passed in 2006. I had just retired from the military. So I was in Japan at the time, and I came down for her funeral. But once she started, her health started deteriorating, I employed, I always had somebody taking care of her. Myself and my older brother, we always ensured that somebody was in there taking care of her. And when she got to a stage where she could not help herself, I actually took a young girl from her parents, asked her parents for her, and put her to live with us. So we technically raised her, and then when Nenen passed, we put her through the rest of her school. After she finished school, I employed her, and she's still working with me now.
So you know that whatever success that you enjoy or you've enjoyed over the years definitely has to be attributed to you and your brother, to some extent, I would presume, and the fact that you did not turn your back on this lady and that you took care of her as much as she took care of you, raising you and your siblings.
It's interesting that you should say that, because at a funeral, one of the things I said when I made my presentation was Nenen took care of me and I took care of her.
You took care of her.
And
yes.
We really did our best, I think, with her while she was alive and in the passing. So.
Tell me some more about your siblings.
Yeah. My brother Patrick,
the older one.
The older one. I actually have by my father. I actually have a brother here in town. Yeah, Desmond Thomas. He lives in Fortney.
Okay.
But he lived with us for a very short time. He lived with Nenen for a very short time in Leslie. But he actually is from Portsmouth. So we've never been very close. We communicate, but we never really lived close together. But Patrick and I, we were very close. Patrick stayed with us in Wesley for several years before going to St. Croix. Also, my sister Teresa, she lived with us for a while. She's in England now. She lived in Montserrat for a while, but after the volcano, then she moved to England and the States. And then my younger brother, Bernard, he lived in Cottage. And the thing about it is, because we were so spread apart, my younger brother in Cottage, my sister in Ansley May, when I was going to PSS, sometimes on the weekends, instead of coming back to Wesley, I would stay in Ansley May and spend a weekend with her, and then go back to school on Monday morning. So we really didn't have a close relationship until we all got to St. Croix together. And once we got to St. Croix together, then we had more of a bond, I would say. But Patrick, Bernard is in St. Croix, he's doing well. Patrick is in Texas at the moment. Teresa is in England, and Mary is also in St. Croix.
And TC is in between Dominic and Japan.
And St. Croix.
And St. Croix. So you told us a bit about, helping Nenen in terms of the farm, but give us a clearer picture of what life was like growing up with her.
Nenen, as I said, was a tough person,
in the community of Wesley.
Oh well, Nenen was well known in Wesley. I grew up as a Methodist, and she was very active in the Methodist Church. When they had a cookouts, she would be one of the people who would go out to cook. In fact, at those days they used to have awards for the best looking yards in the community, and she would win every now and then. She would win because she kept her place looking so nice. I remember she actually built a step, concrete step, coming down from the road to the house. She did that herself. She built outside they used to have the brick wall, the little place you could wash your clothes. She built that also. So she was, I don't know, I wouldn't say she was a big community person per se, but every carnival, she had a ballet band. Believe it or not, I used to dance ballet.
Ballet piche, ballet saute.
How I do, we. Yeah, she had a band. She put together a band every carnival, and we get some young people together, and we used to have to go to dance ballet.
Did you enjoy it?
I enjoyed it. I don't think I wanted to, but I had to. Because if Nenen said you were going to do something,
you better believe you were going to do it. Yes. Okay, wonderful.
So she was active in that way. That she definitely participated in that type of stuff in the village. Yeah.
And for you as a boy, what was it like? Friends, hanging out. I know you said sometimes on a Saturday night when your friends are out, you'd probably have to be home doing some chores and doing other things. But overall, the life of a boy growing up in that community.
We had a lot of fun. We had a lot of fun in Wesley, and I did a little spill on the internet, one of our Facebook pages a while back. We did a lot of things growing up. Something that, and a lot of people in Wesley still can verify that. Myself and my best friend, his name is Amos Peter. He's in St. Thomas now, but we call him Sky Blue. So myself and Sky Blue took a course from Leeds, a corresponding course at the time in electronics. And as he was learning it, so I was sucking the information out of him. So he was learning the stuff and passing it on to me. And so we kind of, because we were very close.
Mm-hmm. Except you would be the one getting his certificate.
Exactly. And once we got together and we said, hey, you know what? We think we could make something. And I'm just calling it something for now. So we got a little piece of a cardboard box. And we got some old radios. And we took some parts out of the old radios. The resistor, capacitors, and we got a mic. He turned this small speaker into a mic, and we ran a wire from my house all the way up the hill onto a big manjack tree, put an antenna on there, and we made a radio station.
You made a radio station?
We made a radio station.
What was it called? Did it have a name?
Radio Bottom Wesley.
Radio Bottom Wesley. I'm not even going to ask about the name and where it came from.
Well, yeah, we lived in Bottom Wesley.
Okay.
That's where we live.
Okay, so there's an area in Wesley called Bottom Wesley.
Yes.
So it was Radio Bottom Wesley.
Radio Bottom Wesley.
All right. Okay.
And up to this day, people are still.
What did you all
about it.
transmit? Like what did you all do?
We had a record player.
Mm-hmm. You had a record
We
player.
had a record player. So we played music, and we spoke, and we gave jokes, and we talked, and we went on like this for quite a while. And what happened was, the police came down one day. And they said, we heard about you guys at your radio station, because we were transmitting all the way to Woodford Hill and down to Londonderry.
So people were hearing you.
Yeah, it was a real radio station.
Real radio station.
A real radio station. And the police said, but we have to ask you to close
Shut it
this
down.
because you're disturbing Radio Dominica.
So you were interfering.
We were interfering with Radio Dominica. Our frequency was not quite adjusted enough to have its own frequency, so it was actually crossing over Radio Dominica, and then people were hearing us instead of Radio Dominica. So we had to shut it down.
But you know, shut down or not, I mean, that was amazing. That was an amazing achievement. That you were able to do that.
Up till today, people still meet me and say, yeah, TC, I remember you and Sky Blue making that radio station in Bottom Wesley.
Radio Bottom Wesley.
Radio Bottom Wesley.
Did you ever think of starting one later on in life?
No.
No, not interested. I like that. And that was around what age?
Well, that was before I went to high school, so I'm thinking we were probably about 9, 10.
9, 10?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
2 children.
2 children. Yeah.
Started a radio station until it started messing, interfering with
Yeah.
Radio Dominica at the time is what it was called, right?
Yes, that's what DBS was
Amazing
called.
stuff, amazing stuff. I guess that's where you probably started to realize you had quite a creative mode in you.
Yeah.
You know, and
Another thing we used to do is we would tune, those days they had shortwave radios, so we would tune the shortwave radio to listen to the pilots talking in the airplanes, and you could hear pilots talking to each other and talking to the different. We wouldn't hear the terminal, but you could hear the airport, but you could hear the pilots making their transmissions, and we would just sit there and tune the radios to listen to them. So we did all of this as kids.
So easy. That's incredible, though. That children, as children, you all were able to do that.
Yeah.
Interesting. So that's part of life in Wesley.
Yeah, I mean that's apart from the usual playing marble and spinning your tops and dragging. And once we made this cabaret, we made this big truck that we would go on the top of a hill in Bottom Wesley called Mammy Hill, and about 4 of us. We actually took a mangrove. My cousin's son was very good with wood, and so he and the rest of us put together, and he made the wheels out of mangrove root, and we had this big cab where we would go up, push it up the hill, and then we would just go down full speed with that. And I remember once coming down that hill, I just came from church and I had just put it at the top of the hill, and I jumped on board, we turned over, bruised my shirt, and when I got home, it was a beating from the men.
Yes, you better believe it. What was Wesley like back then? How do you remember Wesley?
I remember Wesley as a city. Yeah, Wesley was a city. I mean, I grew up in Wesley, and I wasn't an outgoing person per se. When I was small, there are certain places you couldn't go. Then I would say you better not go Eden Road, where they called Powell Park at the time. So that place you couldn't go at all, because it was considered off limits, But before I went to school, pretty much stayed in our little circle, Bottom Wesley, Mopo Hill. It was a small area in Wesley. And you went to church, you went to school, and you really didn't go out after that. But later on in life, looking at Wesley had some powerhouses. We had some very strong people in Wesley. And I don't want to call names because I'll leave out somebody. But we had some very tough men in Wesley. A lot of talent. I remember there was a gentleman by the name of Major. I think I'm short, but he was a lot shorter than I was. But he could put down a bet when a truck came back from town with a problem. Major would put the engine down that night, fix the problem, and put the engine back up so the truck would go back to town the next morning.
Wow. He was that skilled.
He was that skilled. Very talented guy. So we had these kind of people in Wesley. I mean, we had some of the fastest truck drivers in Wesley. We had some of the best looking trucks in Wesley. Farming in Wesley when I was growing up was king. I mean, it was boss. Vehicles were, I remember once there was a Ford pickup that came and every week you looked, somebody had a brand new Ford. Trucks were just almost on every corner had a Bedford truck in Wesley. Land Rovers were all over the place. So Wesley actually was, I mean, a vibrant community, very vibrant. And as I said, we had stuff like even simple things like having competition, yard competition, and those things was a community. It was really a community. And then on August Monday, Easter Monday, everybody went to Cabana, and then they had, they had all the festivities in Cabana. Even something as simple as the boxing shed that was in Londonderry. It was like a gathering of the people in the boxing shed. You knew everybody that was there. And after I left secondary school, I actually worked there. I worked in this, I built boxes for the banana. We had this staple machine this high.
And at that time, TC, banana was king.
Banana was
and
boss, yes.
People in Wesley were living well.
We're living very, very well. I mean, as I said, Nenen alone could load a Bedford truck full of bananas, and I mean, the people like the Phillips and people like Sparrow, and they were the people with the Hippolytes. They had big farms, and Roxon. These guys had farms. Copra houses were everywhere. People were selling copra and making good money. Citrus, people were selling citrus, ground provision, bananas. You would take your bananas to Londonderry and then when they reject the parts the bananas that they rejected, that would also, you would send that down to Portsmouth during the week to sell as reject.
Yes.
So you would actually sell the reject bananas to the hucksters, and the good bananas would go to these. So you hardly lost anything, So it was the place. I mean, it was very, very vibrant.
Those were the days, DC.
Those were good days.
Those were the days. Let us talk about school. So education. I would presume that was important to Nenen too?
To a certain level.
To a certain level.
Yeah. And that was, I think, probably one of her weak points, I would say, towards me. Because I went, I remember once I was going to Wesley Government School. That's where I went to school. And I came home, I got an A. And I was dancing. And I was so happy I got an A. And I was like,
over the moon.
And I came home and I showed it to her, so excited. Look, man, I got an A. And she's like,
and to her,
that you jump about it. To that was like nothing. And I was just so deflated at that point, And I
she
think,
didn't understand.
Yeah, she showed her she had tough luck. She knew it was a good thing, but she didn't want to show me that it was something that she, I don't understand the thinking of it because I'm not a psychiatrist or something. But the other thing was I did well in school. I went to preschool in Wesley. I went to stage 1, stage 2, skipped to standard 1, didn't go to stage 3. Went to standard 2, standard 3, standard 4, skipped to standard 6. Then they said I was too small, the bigger boys would beat me up, so they put me back in standard
No way.
Put me back to standard 5.
Who made those decisions, for crying out loud?
And there were some big guys. There were some big guys.
And you were
instead.
little.
You look at me now. So they put me back, and then I went and I took the common entrance, and I.
But did you grow any much? I mean, within the last year?
I didn't grow much. They used to call me Don't Grow.
Don't grow.
But I stood the common entrance the first time. I didn't make it, and the second time.
Interesting.
Yeah, I made it the second time.
Because you appear to be relatively intelligent.
Right.
I mean, you got an A after all.
You think so, right?
I'm teasing you there.
But one of the things she did was like, and I think, well, I'm pretty sure that's why I'm not so deep into sports. I've never really been, a sports person. Because on Friday she would say, well, what are you going to do in school in Kokoye? All you guys going to do in school today, Friday is just waste time, and so let's go to the garden. So most Friday afternoons, we would have to go to the garden.
Okay.
And then a lot of Fridays we would have to go carry bananas. And that's when sports was in the afternoon, Friday afternoons.
Okay.
So I really was never...
You never had the opportunity really.
to partake in sports. And then when I left Wesley, I went to... I wanted to go to grammar school. I really, really wanted to go to the grammar school.
What about the grammar school?
Because it seemed like everybody before me, that's where they went, grammar school. All I read about was grammar school. And my cousins were living in, they had basically a whole house where they went to, because they all were going to school in town. And so she said, she's not going to send me to Rose. I'm going to Portsmouth, I'm going to secondary school. So she sent me to Portsmouth. And then she always complained that I was in Portsmouth wasting time. She had to be making copra by herself. She had to be on the farm alone, and I was in school. And basically, to her, it was just a headache and everything. So I went to first form, then second form. No, first form, I doubled first form.
Okay.
I doubled first form, and then I got my hair screwed on a little straighter. I went to second form, then I went to third form. And then the pressure from her to, just got too much. So I just left.
You quit?
I just quit.
You were not thrown out or anything like that?
I just stopped going. I just didn't go back. And I decided, you know what? She said she had a hit in her eye from the coconut shell, from breaking the coconut, and she basically blamed it on me because she was doing this to support me in school.
Oh.
So it just got to a point where I remember once and it's like anytime she thought that I was going to be in school, basically, I guess having fun or more relaxed, she would move me to another place. So it's like I lived in Lago with my cousin, then I moved to I'm not sure what you call it, everybody's cemetery in Portsmouth, to another lady's, a friend of hers house. Then I moved across the bridge close to the market by another lady. Then she moved me to Zikak by another friend of hers. So I just kept moving all over the place and it wasn't because I was doing anything, it was just she felt that she didn't like where I was, or she came up with a reason to move me around. So I eventually just left school. That was my education here in Dominica, basically. So I always regretted that part.
I have to find out. So when Nenen moved you to all of those places, how were you able to assist her?
Well, I was during the holidays, of course, I came up, and on the weekends I had to, you had trucks running up and down. So most weekends I would go up to Wesley to work. I mean, we went to the farm, and during the holidays, that's where we spend the time, in the garden. So. But she could read and write, which was interesting, but she never, for some reason, and I think that's a lesson that has to be learned.
Why though do you think that?
I don't know. I really can't put my finger on it. One of the things she was saying is she had to work very hard to send me to school, but then years later, my mom said, I don't know why she was telling you that, because I was sending her money to put you through school, but she never ever told me that.
Okay.
Yeah. But as I was going to say, that's a lesson I think for parents. If you don't, your kids may have the knowledge and they may have the motivation to go for learning and education. But if you as a parents don't enforce or encourage them or help to motivate them in that arena, then you're likely to dissuade them from something that's very important to them, I think.
Did you hold that against her in any way?
No, I don't think so. I regretted not completing my education in Dominica, but I never associated it with her. I didn't associate not completing with her. I think for some reason I sort of understood her rationale for the way she acted. So I never really say, well, it's because of you I didn't finish school. No, I just always say, I always said to myself, I wish I had completed my high school. You know?
So what did you do after you decided no school, that's it?
After I left, I took a job. I took a job in the boxing plant, building boxes. I've always loved machines, always loved vehicles. And so I took a job building boxes, and I started working with a young man in Wesley, a gentleman in Wesley named Jeff. I started working with Jeff, and then I would still get on my case because she would say, all the boys have garden. Everybody had their own garden, and you one with no garden. I just couldn't get into farming.
It wasn't for you.
I wasn't a farmer, and so I didn't have a garden. So I started working with this guy, Jeff. Well, I worked in the boxing plant for a while. You know, I worked with myself, and Sky Blue. We all
again.
We did
oh boy, where is he, by the way?
He's in St. Thomas.
He's in St. Thomas.
Yes,
okay.
So myself, Sky Blue, some other young man, Brooks, James, Swanston, a bunch of us were building boxes, and we had these huge staple machines, and you build. I think it was like 5 cents a box. You'd be building boxes all day, and some minuscule.
So if the box was 5 cents, is that the price to be sold, or what was being paid to you?
That's our fee.
That's your fee.
That's all. That's how much we get.
5 cents.
5 cents a box.
Per box.
Per box. And
5 cents would have been valued around what today?
Well, remember, bread was a penny, you know.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Yeah. So I mean, it was a big box.
It certainly wasn't a big box.
It's definitely not big box now. So I did that for a while, and then I started working with Jeff. Jeff was a he took me almost as his son. And remember that time my dad was around, but I chose to work with Jeff instead. And so I worked with him as a conductor. Back then we called it footboy. And
you mean opening and closing the door of the bus?
No, well, it was trucks at the time.
So what was the role of the conductor?
Loading the trucks, washing the trucks at the end of the day, picking up the goods, because they would give the driver a list of things to buy in town, and then you would have to go to Astafan, pick it up, load the truck. You go to Nasi, pick it up, put it on the truck, and then when you get to the different places, you have to load it in a way that you can get it, you know, whose own is going first, whose own is coming second, help the passengers on and off the truck, that type of stuff. But it was mostly dealing with the loading and
the goods.
The goods and
yes,
truck.
Because I mean, what I know as a conductor is the person on the bus who sits, you know, like on the side of the bus and close to the door, opens the door when somebody flags the bus, you know, that kind of thing.
You had the most uncomfortable seat on the truck. You were on the tailboard. The last at the back of the truck had an extra piece hanging out at the back. That's where you stood. That was your position. Sometimes we would go lie at the top of the truck after we loaded the truck. We'd be on the top of the truck. Come rain or sunshine, that's where you were. So
I'm picking up from this to see that you were not a lazy person, and hard work didn't scare you.
No, I've always worked. I mean, the only time I showed signs of laziness, I think, was when I had to go to the farm, because I did not like going to the farm. But when it came to something I liked doing, I mean, I worked hard with Jeff. I mean, we have to wake up at 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning, go get the truck ready, make sure everything was good, because by 5 o'clock we'd start making rounds, blowing horn around the village. Picking up people around the village. And then we go to town, you get a nap on the way to town, of course, and then you get to town, then you park by the bridge. When you make all your shopping, then you park by the bridge waiting for people to come on board. Then you go down, you have to drop everything off. When you're done, you have to wash the truck. And I made good money. I made $30 a month.
$30. A whole $30. I guess probably it was like maybe $300 today.
Yeah, I made good money. Yeah.
But I'll tell you, it's the first time that I have a guest sharing that with me, that they did that type of job, and that kind of happened in the past in terms of being the conductor, as you term it, for a truck, and doing that kind of thing. It's the first time that I'm hearing that. So for me, there's always something new to learn on the program. So there were people who did that back then.
Oh yes. Well, and the good thing about it is, like I said, Jeff was a very kind-hearted guy, right? And so the minute I turned 18, he took me to get my driver's license. So I was this little short person driving this big 3-ton truck around the village. And I was one of the few young boys in the village.
Did they have to raise up the seat for you or put some cushions on there?
Yeah, I was one of the few young boys in the village that actually was able to drive and taught other guys, help other guys to drive. There's a good friend of mine, and he's married but not from Wesley, Nati. Every time we get together, he would always say, "Why? TC will teach me for driving." So, because we had that, we had that good rapport of myself and Jeff. I mean, I would, after work, his wife was really nice to me, and they treated me almost as one of their sons. And so it was a good experience. It was really a good experience doing that type of work. And he taught me, one of the life lessons he taught me, I remember one day I was supposed to go to St. Croix and it didn't work out that time. And I was kind of depressed about it. And he still looked at me and he said, "TC, anything that has to happen is going to happen. If it has to happen, it will happen. So don't let it bother you." And a few months later, I was gone.
He was gone. We're going to take a quick break, TC, and we're going to talk about TC leaving and heading to St. Croix. Life after that.
Okay.
Keep it locked. You can have some Twapita water while we just take a quick break, and we're coming right back. This is the In the Spotlight radio show. We're live on Q95 FM radio. We're also live on the In the Spotlight radio and the TV shows page. So please go there and follow us. Become a fan of our fans page as well. It's In the Spotlight radio show fans. So check that out as well. We appreciate whatever support that you provide to us, whether it be by simply going and following on our social media platforms. Again, bigging up Ronald Lastafan and Pamplemousse Goodies and Services, the Great Old House and the Callaloo House. Check them out for your meals and for dinner, especially Father's Day is coming up. Let's see what they have on offer for you and your dad and your family. We want to say thanks to Josephine Gabriel and the Company Limited for providing us with Trois pure Dominica water, pure water from our beautiful nature island Dominica. And we thank Q95 for allowing us to be here on a Monday night. Those of you who supported our 10th anniversary celebrations, we're really grateful and thankful to you for your support. We're coming right back to continue talking with Dr. McDonald Thomas. Quite a nice story unfolding here on the In the Spotlight radio show.
In the Spotlight on Q95 FM radio every Monday night from 8 p.m. In the Spotlight, featuring people from far left of Dominica life, spotlighting their triumphs and tragedies, dreams, hopes, aspirations, untold stories, touching the human and personal side of our people in politics, religion, sports, business, music, culture, the media, and more. Getting to know our farmers, our public servants, youth, and the ordinary Dominica. Listen to their stories. No limitations, no restrictions, no holds barred. In the Spotlight, we'll also spotlight interesting topics, issues, and relevant situations. Don't miss In the Spotlight on Q95 FM radio every Monday nights from 8 p.m. In the Spotlight.
1-on-1 with interesting personalities, educational and informative topics and issues, intriguing and entertaining. A must listen to In the Spotlight, Monday nights from 8 p.m. on Q95.
In the studios here at Q95. So, TC, it would have been around 1978.
That's right.
That you made that move to St. Croix. How did that happen?
Well, my mom, as I said, my mom actually sent for us one by one, and it was my turn. I was number 3 in line, and so she sent my documents, went through Barbados, did got the documents, and then moved to St. Croix. Got to St. Croix, didn't like it.
Whoa. First of all, what was it like living Dominica? Were you sad? Were you in anticipation of what's to come? What was it like? What was the feeling?
You know, I think I was happy to leave in a way because I don't think I had no real tie to Dominica at the time. You know, I had already run away from home twice. So
you ran away from home twice.
Yeah, and then it was a lot of pressure. I ran away once. I went to Bonn by my aunt, and then I ran away again. Went to Ansley by my sister. She came back and
did they send you back? Oh, the what? Did they send you back?
No, she came back.
She came for you.
She found me, and she came from where I was. Came, and I woke up and I heard her saying, "Give me back my child." So I had to go back. So it was. I was actually looking forward to going to be with my mom because I had not spent much time with my mom. Only time when she came down, I'd go to cottage, spend a couple of days with her. So I had not, I had not had a real strong relationship with my mother. Nenen was who I knew, and so getting to St. Croix, I realized I really didn't like St. Croix. The water issue, there's no water, and then. It just seemed so different. So I got there, and my first job I got in St. Croix was actually working with a mechanic from Antigua, and I worked with him for a little while. Didn't get paid so well. He paid me whenever he wanted, but I didn't really think about it because I was learning mechanic and stuff like that.
And you were settling in. You were trying to settle in.
It was mostly staying busy. And I attended night school to try to finish my education, try to get my degree.
Good job!
But I didn't finish.
Oh my goodness, Tiffy. What are you doing to me?
I didn't finish. So I went on and I worked at a supermarket as a bagger. So people come and I'd bag their groceries for them. And I did that for a little while. Then I got a job at a clothing store. As the stock clerk, I'll be stocking the stuff at the back of the store. And I did that for a little while. And then one day a friend of mine came in and he said, "TC, guess what? I just signed up with the Navy." I said, "You signed up with the Navy?" He said, "Yeah, I'm going to go and join the Navy to fix airplanes." And I said, "That sounds like a good idea." I just left and I signed up with the Navy too. And so I was only on St. Croix for 11 months.
For 11 months?
11 months. I got there in I believe, August of 78, and in June of 79, I left.
You were gone?
Yes, I left.
So what was the process? What was the process involved in getting to the Navy?
You signed up with the recruiter, and then they sent you to, you did a test, what they call an ASVAB test, basically to test your skills your knowledge skill. And then from there, they sent you to Puerto Rico. You did your physicals, and once you were fit, you came back, you packed your bags, and you went to boot camp for 8 weeks.
And height didn't have anything to do with it?
No, I would not have made it.
I'm not picking on you, okay? Yes, so that was it.
Yes, and I left. So my stay in St. Croix was very, very,
Very
brief.
short.
Yeah, and I spent most of the time in church because my mother was a preacher. So we did church, and I mean, I haven't been someone that was, out during. Actually, I haven't drank. I probably drank alcohol twice in my life, for just maybe tasted it. So I'm not somebody. I puffed on a cigarette once and it gave me a headache. So
you don't drink, you don't smoke.
I don't smoke anything of any kind. So it was my lifestyle. Really wasn't. I wasn't going to parties and all that stuff. So going to church wasn't a problem.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it was. And even in Dominica, I went to church. I went to Methodist church. I was confirmed in the Methodist church. I was part of the boys' brigade in the Methodist church, which is basically for discipline. So I spent most of my time in St. Croix. A lot of my time in St. Croix in church.
In church.
But it was a very brief stay. I didn't stay in St. Croix very long.
So tell us about the stint with the Navy.
That was by far.
And it was a long stint, TC.
It was very long. 26 years. 26 years in the US Navy. And I enjoyed it. I really, really enjoyed it. I got to boot camp and it was a rude awakening. Very rude awakening.
Yeah, because your friend, what's his name? What was the friend who came?
Sky Blue. No, Leroy was my friend.
So Leroy came to tell you about Navy.
Right.
He's going to go fix planes in the Navy. So you're thinking, I can do that too. Okay, you went, you did your little thing, your training, your whatever the case is, and then you get the rude awakening boot camp.
Well, yeah, we did the medical, and from the medical we go straight to boot camp. That's the first insertion into the military. And so they come throwing the trash cans down early in the morning to wake you up, and then you have to make your bed early in the morning, and you're marching in the sun all day long.
You see it in the movies, so it's real.
True. It's true. Yeah, it's true. Yeah, and you have to go learn to put out fires because you may go to the ship. They put you in a room with what's it? I can't remember the gas, and you go in the room. The name of the gas even escapes me. What they throw out, and they lock you in a room with your mask on, and you're in there, and you have to take it off and stay in there for a period of time to learn to deal with if you're in that situation without a mask.
To survive. Survival skills in that situation.
So you do that, and then you learn to fight fires on a ship because obviously you might go to a ship, and then you learn to fight fires on an airplane that might be on fire. So you do all those things, and you do that in 8 weeks. But you're marching morning, noon, and night. You're out there marching on the pavement. And so when you get very little sleep, you're all in one room and you're all showering together, and it wasn't something I was really comfortable with at the start, but after a while it just grows on you, And so I did that, and after boot camp, then you go through what they call classification. They look at your ASVAB test that you took and they decide what you may be best at. And so they looked at mine and they said, we're going to send you to school to fix airplanes. And I said, no school for me. Just send me out there and I'm going to learn to fix the airplanes on my own. I don't need to go to school. And they said,
that's not how it works.
No, you're going to go to school. Some people don't go to school. They actually send them straight to the fleet. But I said, I wanted to go to the fleet, and he said, no, we're going to send you to school.
What was the reasoning in your case?
I just thought I could pick it up.
No, what was their reasoning for not allowing you to go straight?
Because they felt my score was high enough that if I had the additional training, I probably do well. And I mean, they do this for a living, so looking at the numbers, they know.
Yeah.
So they sent me to school in Memphis, and I went to school in Memphis, 12 weeks of school, learning to fix airplanes. And I thought it was well worth it because from there they sent me to the ship. I left Memphis and I went to San Francisco to Alameda, which is in the Bay Area, San Francisco area, straight to the ship. And 30 days later, I was on the way to the Indian Ocean on a 7-month cruise on the ship, 7-month deployment on the ship. So going to school, now what I found out on the ship is if you didn't go to school, then they put you up on the flight deck of the ship, and those are aircraft carriers. There are about 5,500 of us on that ship.
What, how many?
5,500
people.
People, yes.
Okay.
It's basically a self-contained city. It has everything. And so if you didn't go to school, then you were sent on the flight deck to tie down airplanes and do all the menial tasks at the top. So they would come through the different shops and they would look for the people who didn't go to school and tell them, okay, it's your turn up on the flight deck. And
so you didn't have to do that.
I didn't have to do
it's
that.
a good thing.
It was a very good thing.
Yes.
And I was very happy that
Yes.
But one thing that you did have to do is you had to do your time cleaning bathrooms, cooking for the crew. So you had to do 6 months of that. And I did that. And then I came back to work in the shop as an engine mechanic. And I enjoyed that so much, even while we were on deployment. And they make the deployments pretty enjoyable because you go to places, you go to the Philippines, you go to Australia, you go to Thailand, you go to Singapore, you go to Africa, you go to Dubai, you stop in so many places. You are at sea for a long time, you work very hard, but you enjoy it.
As part of the Navy, what does the Navy do?
The mission of the Navy is to maintain the oceans free for commercial traffic. So basically, the Navy patrols all the.
So you don't fight wars.
Well, we do,
okay.
But that is what you prepare for. But the goal is deterrent. That when people see an aircraft carrier, because an aircraft carrier doesn't travel alone. An aircraft carrier normally has about 70 warplanes on it. And the small ones have about
This is intriguing stuff.
The small one has about 5,500 people. The bigger ones have about 6,500 people. And the aircraft carrier has that many people. It's about 70 airplanes.
And you are all members of the Navy. How do they call you all?
Sailors.
Sailors.
Right.
Navy sailors.
Sailors. We have sailors and officers because the
Okay.
officer you're no longer considered a sailor.
Okay. Okay.
So the aircraft carrier is out there. It has submarines accompanying it. You have frigates accompanied. You have refuelers. You have replenishment ships accompanied. So you have a whole fleet of ships that's surrounding the aircraft carrier. So you go out as a battle group, they call it. And when you go out together. And so you're looking at a force, and I mean, other nations know when you come out. And more than likely, there are 2 carriers out at one time. So you're out there, you have the most sophisticated fighters in the world, and you're out there, and the goal is that when people see you, or the nation see you, they will think twice about doing something. So you're hoping that you don't have to use that force. But you're training every single day, or almost every single day. You're out flying airplanes and learning how to drop bombs, and we are out there making sure that we fix those airplanes, and as a sailor, because I started as a mechanic, of course. So I did that as a mechanic for a while, and then you get to the level of chief. I remember on my first ship there was this young Marine who said to me, he said, overseas they don't call me TC. When I leave Dominica, this is the only place they call me TC. Everywhere else they call me Mac. Because of McDonald. Okay. Yeah, so in the whole Navy they call me Mac. So it's like he said, Mac, let me tell you something. If you are the best in what you do, you are not going to get in trouble. And if you do, people will defend you because they know you are the best and they want to make sure that they have you back to do what you have to do. He said, keep that in mind and just learn everything about everything. And so every engine, every airplane that came on the ship, I wanted to learn. Every school that came up, I wanted to go. And my supervisors would send me because I would volunteer. I want to go to school for this engine. I want to go to school for this airplane.
Says the gentleman who left school in 3rd form.
Yeah. So I ended up going to all type of schools for all type of engines, all type of aircraft. And so I took up a supervisory role at a very young age. I was, you go to E1, E2, E3, E4. By the time I was E4, I was running the shop at night. So I was actually one of the leaders in the work center. And so I did that until I went up for chief. When you become a chief now, then you're no longer working on airplane. You're running the operation at that level. So you're in charge of all the guys who are fixing the airplane. So I made that in about 9 years.
You made chief?
I made chief, yes. I made chief. I made it the second time up. Yeah. But before that, I went to Texas. And while I was in Texas, I said, you know what? I need my GED. So I went and I got my high school diploma.
Okay.
And so I got that out of the way. And then I decided, you know what? I want to leave the Navy. I don't think I need to stay in the Navy, which was very interesting.
Did you, by the way, before you even decide to leave, did you get to fight any battles? Did you get to engage in any of that? No, you were just fixing your planes.
Fixing planes, yes.
Were you flying?
I did some
flying. Did you learn to fly?
That's part of the Texas story. Because when I got to Texas, I was a mechanic at the time, obviously, and if you are one of the top mechanics, they make you a backseat rescue mechanic. They make you a rescue mechanic.
Break that down for us.
So to become a rescue mechanic, what happens is on the weekends, the airplanes leave, for example, Texas, and they will fly to Nevada or fly to Florida. If the aircraft develops a problem, they need to send a mechanic to fix it. So these airplanes have two seats. So they have to send a mechanic. They look for the top mechanic they have, and they send them to fix the airplane to bring it back. So I was chosen to be one of those mechanics. So that means that I had to go through ejection seats training in case I had to eject from an airplane. So I went through ejection seat training, went through rescue swimming, which I'm not a strong swimmer, and so I qualified as a backseat mechanic. So airplane broke down, for example, in Nevada, and I had to go rescue that airplane. So in going to rescue airplanes, you get time to fly because you're in the back seat. The pilot say, "Hey, you have the stick." These airplanes don't have yoke; they have stick.
Okay.
So they say, "Hey, Mac, you got a stick." So they give you some flying time, so you end up doing some flying. So that was fun. But the interesting part about that is, after you fix the airplane, you have to fly back in the airplane that you fixed.
You have to get it right.
So you have to get it right. So I did that for a while, and that was fun. So I was in Texas. I got my GED, and it
was important to you to get that.
It was.
Because I mean, you had risen through the ranks in the Navy. You had done all kinds of schooling, getting yourself educated within the confines of the Navy, of course.
Right.
But it was important to you that you completed your high school education.
Yes. So I got it there, and then from there, I still decided I was going to leave the Navy. And this is interesting because when I went for my interview, the guy told me he was a retired sailor. He was a retired master chief. He had went all the way up. And he said, "You have all the qualifications. I can hire you. I can hire you, and I can hire you to do whatever we need you to do because you qualify. But think about this. What if you stayed in the Navy? What if you stayed in and you became a chief? And you got picked up as an officer?" He said, if you became
a chief or higher?
A chief, you go...
Because you had already become a chief.
No, I was still an E5 at the time.
Okay, all right.
So he said you could you could make it to a chief, and then who knows, you could even become an officer. Because you can cross over from enlisted to being a commissioned officer. So he said, if I hire you and I give you a job, that's it. But what if you stayed in the Navy? And so he actually talked me out of getting a job.
And to stay in the
Navy. So I said, okay, I'll stay.
You stayed?
So I stayed.
And you made chief?
And I made chief.
Yeah.
And I became an officer.
You did?
And it's just, I'll tell you the story. It's very interesting to how I became an officer. I love driving fast. And I had a Skyline, and people who know cars know that a Skyline.
I know what a Skyline is.
So I was driving one day on the military base. I was a chief at the time, and I worked for the admiral, and my job at the time was to monitor and inspect all the military commands from Guam to Dubai. And in that you have all Japan, the Philippines, Singapore. So we went and we looked at what they did, how they did it. And so this outfit was in charge of the whole Pacific. So I worked for the boss, which is the admiral. And I was driving on the base one day, and I was driving fast. And the skipper, the head of the base, was crossing the street from the gym, and I barely missed him. So I swayed, I went back and I parked, and I went back to my office. I was in my office, and my lieutenant came in and he said, "Hey, Chief, the admiral wants to see you." And I was like, "The admiral normally wants to see me, Chief." So I went upstairs and I checked in, I saluted, and I said, I presented myself. And he said, "You're Chief Thomas, right?" I said, "Yes." "Yes, sir." He said, "Do you own a white car, a white Skyline? Number plate 5999?
Sanction coming your way."
I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "Do you know you almost ran over the skipper of the base?" And he yelled at me for about 3 minutes, And then after he got through yelling, before he dismissed me, he said, "Have you applied to become an officer?" And I said, "No, sir." And he said, "Why not?" And I said, "Sir, because I don't want to lose my Dominican passport." That was my only reason. I really valued my Dominican passport, and I decided.
So how would you lose the passport?
Because to become an officer, you must be a citizen.
Oh, you were not a citizen as
I
yet.
was not a citizen. And he said, "Okay." And he dismissed me, and I went downstairs. And then my lieutenant asked me what happened, and I told him.
But you wouldn't lose your Dominican passport, would you, TC?
Well, I didn't really want to be a U.S. citizen. And at the time, I wasn't thinking I could have both passports.
Both, of course.
So I spoke to my lieutenant, and he said, "What did he say to you?" And I told him that he threw me out.
He scolded you.
And then what he told me after. And he looked at me and he said, "You know what that means, right?" And I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "That means you have to apply to become an officer." And when he asked you that, that means he's telling you, go and apply to become an officer. So by the time I realized what had happened, the secretary had already booked me for a flight to Guam to go swear in, get my citizenship, to come back to put in my application to become an officer.
He couldn't care less about you and what you said about not wanting to lose your Dominican citizenship.
So I did, and 5 of us applied to become officers, and I was the only one to make it.
And remind us again what was the important significance of the officer?
Being an officer, you are in charge of all the enlisted, all the chief, everybody. You are leading the organization as an officer.
And you became that.
Yeah, you're leading the organization. You are no longer for example, on the ship as an enlisted person, you're sleeping in a room with about 150 people. As an officer, you're sleeping in a room with 2 people.
Okay.
Yeah. And
another fellow officer or
2 officers.
Two officers.
Until you get to a certain rank, which lieutenant commander, which is what I retired as, which is equivalent. Most people know major is equivalent to major. Then you're in a room by yourself.
Okay.
So on the ship, of course.
I see you, TC. I see you. So officer, you got to officer, and then what would come after officer?
Well, that's it. That's it. When you become an officer, well, when they choose you to become an officer, you go to Pensacola for officers training, and then they teach you how to use your knife and your fork, how to eat properly, and all the rules and regulations that comes with an officer, and how leadership. They start teaching you about leadership and that type of stuff. So you learn that, and then you go back to your outfit. And from there, I went back to Guam, and I became the supply officer. So I was in charge of the budget of the outfit and making sure all the supplies, keeping track of the fuel of the airplanes, the cost of the parts of the airplane. So anything that had to do with supply and logistics, that was my job when I went back to Guam. for the first 2.5 years.
And what happened to the Dominican passport? Nothing happened to the Dominican passport. Right?
And I paid.
I was about to ask you, how are persons in the army, in the navy, what's the pay like?
Well, when I started, my pay was $720 US dollars a month, which was nothing.
Nothing.
When I first started. When I became an officer, it was worth becoming an officer.
It was worth it. And we're just putting that down, right? And then, so you did that for some time. And how did you get to lieutenant?
Well, you're an ensign. You start as an ensign, and you're an ensign for 2 years. And then 2 years later, if you don't...
So wait. I just want to understand the steps. So you're an officer.
Well, the whole group is called officer. It's commissioned officer. The whole group. The whole thing.
Okay.
But when you become an officer, the rank, it's just the ranks that changes as an officer.
Okay.
So the first rank is an ensign, and then you become a lieutenant, the junior grade, which we call Lieutenant JG. Then 2 years later, if you really don't destroy anything or mess up anything or burn down an airplane, then you become a lieutenant. And then after that, you become lieutenant commander, and then captain, which is the highest you can go in that category as an officer. If you in a college, remember I have no college degree.
Right.
So if you're a college degree officer, then you can go as
even higher. Yeah. Okay. And you said something a while ago, if you don't burn down an airplane. But did you have some experience with almost burning down a plane or something?
Yeah. That was an interesting. Before I became an officer, I was running an operation.
Wait, that happened before you became an officer?
Yeah.
I'm waiting to hear.
We had built up an airplane because normally you have an airplane that you're using when you're short of parts, you take all the parts out of it and you fix the airplane. So it cannot be broken for a certain period of time. You have to fly it within a certain period of time. So we fixed this airplane and put it back together. I was leading it. I was an E6, which is right before I made chief. So I was leading the crew that was doing that. And of course, I'm the one that's running up the airplane. I have to go in the airplane, start it up, test it, make sure everything works in it, check out all the systems. So we brought the airplane is brought into a house called a hush house. You can run it full power, close the doors, and nobody outside hears anything. So it's a very quiet place to run an airplane. When you're outside, you can barely know an airplane is inside turning. Anyway, we fixed this airplane, we brought it up into the hush house, and we're running up this airplane. And I see the guys on the ground waving, they're waving, what's going on? And I'm looking at them, and they're waving, and they're pointing. But they're not supposed to wave, they're supposed to make a figure 8, a horizontal figure 8, which is the sign for a fire.
Oh.
But they got so nervous that they just started waving, and I didn't know what they were waving for. Until the guy in the control room started making the figure 8, then I realized there was a fire. So when I realized there was a fire, I did the appropriate emergency procedures in the cockpit to try to put out the fire. Fire didn't get out because the doors of the engine were open, so all the fire extinguisher just fell on the floor. So the fire continued enveloping the airplane, and it just started going up. So then the guy started saying, "Get out of here, get out of here." So I opened up the canopy and I jumped out of the airplane and left the airplane on fire. And we all ran out of the building, called the fire department. They came in and opened the doors and the main doors and pulled the airplane out, started putting out the fire. They put out the fire. And I'm nervous.
Without anything grave happening.
$35 million. The airplane is $35 million, right? For that airplane. It's a F-18 Hornet. Airplane burnt beyond repair.
And you thought, that's it for me, I'm done.
They pulled the airplane out. I went back to the outfit, and the chief looked at me and he said, "Well, that one is over. Let's fix that one."
$35 million of plane.
Yeah. But of course, there had to be an investigation.
Yes.
So they pull what we call normally in civilian world the black box.
The black box, yes.
So it has what we call the tape. So they pull the tape on it and they ran the tape, and NCIS gets involved. That's actually
there's NCIS,
Navy Criminal Investigative Service. They get involved to investigate what went on and who is accountable. And so they did the whole investigation. And during that time, I was up for chief. And so my skipper came to me and he said, I was ranked the #1 guy out of the five outfits. And he said to me, Mac, he said, I know you are supposed to be #1 this year, because if you're #1, you're almost a shoo-in to be chief. He said, but I can't make you #1 because there's a pending investigation and we don't know how it's going to come out.
Yeah.
So I can't make you #1. He said, but let this investigation pass through and we'll see what happens. So I waited and they did the investigation and they found out that I had followed all the procedures, necessary emergency procedures according to the tape. But I was the senior person there when it happened. So they issued me a non-punitive letter of reprimand, meaning that I'm the one responsible. They're not going to punish me because it wasn't my fault, but
you're still responsible.
I'm still responsible.
Because you were the most senior
I was
person
the most
there.
senior person there. But once the admiral leaves that district, the letter goes away.
Oh.
So I had to keep that letter until the admiral leaves, until he left. When he left, the letter went away, and the following year I was ranked #1 and made chief.
That is an interesting story.
The airplane was taken to salvage back to the States, and it was useless.
What happened to the environment?
They had to completely rebuild, redesign the hush house, because the hush house was supposed to have
money outside of the 45 million for the planet, you see. Oh my goodness.
Because the hush house was supposed to have extinguishers that should have fired the hoses onto the airplane automatically, sensing the heat, and that didn't work. So they had to redesign the hush house.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. And when I retired, one of my best friends in the Navy said, I retired as a lieutenant commander, and he said, this is proof. He said, Mac is proof that you can burn down an airplane and still make lieutenant commander. But it was fun. I mean, I served on 5 aircraft carriers, only aircraft carriers. And
what does that mean?
Aircraft carriers are...
I'm sorry, you're going to have to break down some things because it's very new to some of us.
Aircraft you see in these big warships that are out there with airplanes on them, those are aircraft carriers. And so I served, I did all my tours on those on aircraft carriers, because every time I went to sea, I went on an aircraft carrier. Okay. Because I didn't want to go. I actually still get seasick. I spent all this time in the Navy and I still get seasick. Motion sickness generally. So I did that. I spent a lot of time on aircraft carriers, but I loved it. Working on airplanes, running up airplanes, starting airplanes, flying airplanes. I actually started flying private airplanes. I started flying Cessnas and all that, because I love flying.
You loved it.
I really love flying. I love being around airplanes. I love being in airplanes. It was just part of it. It was like the best thing that ever happened to me was to be around airplanes.
Were you at retirement age when you left, or you just decided on leaving?
No, 20 years in the military you can leave. After 20 years you can retire. I did 26, and interestingly, as a lieutenant commander, once you get to that rank, you only have 2 more to go, and so it's all politics at that rank. You go into a meeting and you dissent about something you don't like, and you complain about it, and the boss says, he listens to everybody and he says, this is what I'm going to do, and you don't like what he's going to do, but then you have to walk downstairs, because I had about 250 people in my maintenance department working for me, and so I have to collect all the chiefs and the junior officers and give them the information. This is the skipper's policy, and this is what the skipper wants, and I have to sell it to them, and I can see their faces, they don't like it, but then I have to sell it.
You have to do it.
So then the politics just and then you work with some people that are very micromanagers. They want to do your job, they want to do everybody else's job, and it just got frustrating. And then I discovered business, and I said, you know what, I think I've had enough of the military. I think I'll just retire. So I retire and let me look at business.
In the military, when you retire, do you continue to get benefits?
Oh yeah.
After that. You guys, those who watch it can see the smile on his face.
Oh yeah.
A little eyebrow raise.
Very, very good benefit. You have, for example, if a military aircraft lands here, and from here it's going to Puerto Rico, and I'm going to Puerto Rico, I can just jump on board and go to Puerto Rico. I have all my medicals are free. I can just fly. Once I go to St. Croix, I just go into the VA, Veterans Administration's office, and tell them what's wrong, and they will schedule me for anything I want. Everything is free.
Do you get financial benefits?
Very good financial benefits. You have a pension for life.
Pension for life.
Yeah. You have a pension
And
for
if
life.
you ended at lieutenant, commander, all right. Okay, TC. A gentleman says on the Facebook Live, proud of your accomplishments, sir. Your rise to prominence has not clouded your humility in any way. You are a gentleman.
Thank you.
And a few other comments here, on the live, directed at yourself. So TC, you decided, okay, so that's it. You still were going to be comfortable, even having left the Navy.
Right.
But you decided you were going to go into business.
Right.
So take us on the journey from there. So after Navy, what did you do? Where did you go?
After the Navy, I actually...
Oh, there's one more thing I wanted to ask where the Navy is concerned. What's your social, personal life like in that setting?
Great.
Great. All right. Okay.
Because you go to places like, you go to all these great places. I mean, I remember Kenya was awesome. I had a great time. Australia was... I went to Perth, Australia twice, went to Sydney, Australia twice. Loved it. We made friends all over the globe. It was just awesome. Really, really great social life. Very, very good.
Good stuff.
So,
okay, so what did we do after we left the Navy?
I went in two directions after I left the Navy. I looked at academia and I looked at business. Something that very few people know. I'm actually the one who opened the used car market to Dominica. In 1996, I was the first how should I put this? You had Astafans, you had Toyota at the time, and they were bringing in vehicles. But
Vehicles?
They were bringing in mostly new vehicles.
Yeah.
But I was the first normal, non-business person to actually send used vehicles from Japan to Dominica. I opened the market in Dominica for used vehicles. It was in 1996.
1996.
Yes, I went down to Shinjuku, a place called Takadano Baba, and met a company called Papera Traders. And I told them, you know what, I think sending used cars to Dominica might be a good thing. And they said, Dominica, what's Dominica? And I showed them where Dominica was on the map.
A dot.
And they was like, can you sell cars there?
Okay, guys, we're not laughing at that.
And so we started sending cars here. And I didn't have somebody to do it, so I actually had my dad do it. So I started that in 96, and I figured back when I retired that I would go into that. I retired in 2005.
Okay.
And then I also looked at academics. I said, you know what, let me look at, because right before I left the Navy, one of the things in the Navy is, as you get more schooling and more credit, college credit, it also helps your promotion. So when I was a lieutenant, before I made lieutenant commander, I started taking courses to boost my chances to make lieutenant commander, because it's harder to make lieutenant commander than it is. That's the first real difficult step to make. So I started doing college courses. And so I actually got my associate's degree while I was still in the Navy. And then I started on my bachelor's. So I started working on my bachelor's, and then I retired, and I hadn't finished it. So I said, you know what, I need to finish my bachelor's degree. So, and you have educational benefits also with the military. So I finished my bachelor's degree. And then I said, since I'm an aircraft mechanic, the FAA gives you a license if you're an aircraft mechanic. So why don't I try to get a license from the FAA that I can fix an airplane anywhere? Because you can leave the military as a mechanic and it doesn't really mean anything else. But if you have an FAA license, then you're qualified mechanic. So I actually started studying for my FAA license. And so I went through all the tests, did everything I was supposed to do, and I actually got my FAA license to fix airplanes. So I actually have that now. And so I finished that, and I said, okay, let me work on finish my BA. So I kept taking classes while I was looking at businesses. I started business at the same time. If you go down Hillsborough Street, you'll see a greenish building with something blacked out on it, marking blacked out on it. Actually, under it says TC Used Parts.
TC Used Parts.
On Hillsborough Street. That's where I started back then. So I started doing tires and lights there, and then I moved to Pottersville. I started. It's
Pottersville. I think I knew you. I knew you from. Yes.
So I did that there, and then from there I went to Santa Roma, and then from Santa Roma I went to Castle Comfort, and after Maria, then I moved into that new building. I built a new building there, and I moved into that. But then I continued on the academic track, so I started to work on my master's now. Because when I'm in Japan, I have so much free time on my hands.
But we need to pause a moment, TC. Why did you, so you left and you went to Japan. Why Japan? And why not come back home or something of the sort?
When I was in Texas, I love music. I love music. And this guy came from Japan when I was in Texas, and he said, Japan is the place to go. You can buy all these great systems, they're cheap. And if you want to make rank fast, Japan is the place to be. Because they look at it as you're away from home, you're working hard, you're always on the ship, you're deployed all the time. If you're doing well, he says you're going to make rank just like that. So that just stuck in my head, and I said, you know what? I want to go to Japan. Because if I go there, I can make rank quickly. And I went back to, when I left Texas, said, where do you want to go next? And I said, Japan.
Oh, that's how that happened.
Yeah. So I ended up right back in Japan. Well, that's how I got into Japan, yeah. So, and when I got there, I loved it. I love I mean, Japanese really, generally don't really care for foreigners. But when you're in Japan in the military, you're still in America, basically. Because you're on a military base, everything is US dollars. So it's almost like you doesn't matter what's outside the gate. You're in Japan, but you're actually in the US military. So I love the military in Japan. I love the excitement. I love the deployment. I love the work. So that's how I actually got into Japan. So after I retired, I just said,
that's it.
I just stayed there. And I do have 2 children there.
Okay.
So I stayed there, and I decided, for the business that I want to do, this is the place I need to be. Okay. And business was going well at the time, so I just stayed in Japan.
You stayed in Japan?
Yeah. So while I was there, I had a lot of time on my hands, and I just said, you know what? Why don't I work on my master's degree? So I started working on my master's. And while I was working on my master's, since I had my FAA ticket license, the Central Texas contacted me and said, hey, we're looking for an instructor to teach aircraft mechanic. But the person must have at least a BA, a bachelor's degree, and an FAA license. I had both.
You had both.
So I started.
Because you're already onto your master's.
Right.
Right.
So I started teaching aircraft maintenance for Central Texas College.
So you moved from Japan?
No, in Japan, because they have a facility in Japan. They have a campus in Japan.
Okay.
So almost all the major schools have campuses on the military bases overseas. So I started teaching for Central Texas College on the base to students who wanted to learn aircraft maintenance. So I started doing that, and then I finished my master's. I got done with my master's, and the professors at University of Phoenix were so impressed with me doing my master's that they said, why don't you think about teaching? So I said, okay, but you cannot teach in the university that you just graduated. You have to wait a year.
Okay.
So I had to wait for that year. After the year, then they took me on board to teach as an adjunct professor, which I still am according to the website. And so I taught the master's course. And at the same time, I was teaching for Central Texas College and teaching at the undergraduate. I was teaching graduate level in University of Phoenix and undergraduate in Central Texas College, plus the mechanic course. And I also started teaching English as a second language because my BA was also English. So I started teaching that also. So I'm teaching and I'm doing business here, and I have time on my hands. I'm going back and forth. And I'm sitting in class one day, teaching my master's course, and one of the professors looked at me and said, he had his doctorate, and he said, why don't you work on your doctorate? And I'm like, I got time on my hands.
Okay.
Why don't I do that?
Okay.
Yeah. But then I started weighing it, and I said, well, it's either my doctorate or flying, because I love flying. And I said, I really thought about it, and I said, well, if I fly, you have to maintain a certain level of proficiency if you fly. And I thought, I want to go home because my goal was always to come home. Okay. And we don't have a flying club. So how am I going to maintain proficiency, even if I get a license? Because I don't want to fly passengers, I just want to do it for private pilots only. So I had you need about 40 hours generally to fly. I had about 28 hours flying already. And I decided, you know what, let me just go the doctorate route. And so I started working on my doctorate.
Doctorate in?
In management.
Management.
And organizational leadership.
Okay. And you completed that in?
I started in 2011 and I finished it in 2018. It took me 7 years.
It took you 7 years?
7 years. I started a dissertation because my dissertation that I wanted to do was going to be about the level of English speaking level, the English speaking level of the Japanese compared to other Asian nations, because it's very, very low. But the high school principal that was going to assist me actually left, and so I had to drop that. I had already spent so much time doing that, but I had to drop it and then take up a new dissertation. So that took me a little time. And then of course you're doing courses online and when it's available. And so it took me a while to get through the process. But that's average for doing it online, part-time, if you're not going to school full-time.
And what you did the dissertation in?
It was, I looked at the Japanese women in the Japanese society, how difficult it was for them to actually attain leadership position or management position within Japanese companies.
Why did you?
Because a friend of mine had done something almost similar, but he looked at it from a different perspective. So I wanted to kind of look at it, and he had done it about almost 10 years before. So I wanted to get a fresh perspective on it from a different. I did a narrative inquiry, which is different from what he did. And I looked at it from more of a management standpoint than leadership. And so I did that because I felt getting your subjects to do the research would have been easier. It was not easier.
It was not.
No, it was not. And so I worked on that. That took quite a dissertation is the toughest part of a degree. Obviously, it takes a lot. You're talking about writing 5 chapters of a lot of work. The research, getting your subjects, and then deciphering the information and actually putting it together.
Analyzing and all of that stuff.
Yes, it takes a lot. And then you send that to the university. The first time I sent my dissertation in, it came back with 19 pages of discrepancies. And I just fell flat when I saw that. And I almost felt like quitting because it was just so much I had to do. I didn't realize it was going to be so tasking. Yeah.
But you didn't give up on that?
Oh, no, I didn't give up. I had a friend in Mississippi, and she just kept saying, you can do it, because her sister was one of my professors. And so she just kept saying, you can do it, man, you can do it, you can do it. Keep
that encouragement, that push.
Yeah.
And
then, of course, the other professors always said, you can do that.
You can do that.
You can do that. And that's something I've learned, and I think a lesson that I think, you cannot really accomplish. There's very little you can accomplish in life without someone mentoring you or guiding you along the way. Anybody who says I did this on my own, I cannot believe them. There's always, even in the military, there was always somebody that took me under the wings and looked at me and said, you know what, Mac, I want you to be I remember this guy, Chief Wiesbicki. When I became a chief, he says, I want you to be a certified aircraft safe for flight. And I said, you do? And he says, yes, you're gonna get certified aircraft safe for flight. And what that does is, after everybody works on the airplane, you as the chief have to review all the discrepancies, look at what they did, determine that what they did is actually going to fix the airplane, and the airplane is going to be okay. And you're going to sign that airplane to say it is safe to fly. So anything happens to that airplane, mechanics may be accountable, but you are accountable because you are the one who released the airplane to go fly. And so that is, I mean...
And you did that?
Oh yeah, I did that in a few outfits. So that was, but the chief, there was always somebody that said, you know, you can do this part. I want you to have this job. I want you to do this position. You know, I want you to... There was one job I had to do, which was take airplanes. You take 2 airplanes, go on the ship, and you work with a group of 42, 45 guys, and you do a 7-month deployment with those 2 airplanes, and you are totally responsible for just those 2 airplanes. And that was the first when you become an officer, basically, you know, grooming you into leadership and managing that. So you start off with about 42 guys, because by the time you get to Lieutenant Commander, you having 200-300 guys that you need to be working with. So
these life experiences, not many people get the opportunity to have.
yeah.
These are varying, very varying experiences, and I mean, it's incredible. Have you decided on writing a book or something?
I used to think about it, but not anymore. Right now, what I'm writing, I love writing, obviously. But right now, I'm looking to collaborate with. Actually, I spoke to Dr. Fontaine to collaborate to do some research. So I want to look into doing some research, because there are certain things I don't want to just have a doctorate and just to have a doctorate. I think you need to also go into the scholarship is fine, but you need to go into doing things also. So I want to start writing articles and doing some research. So I've actually spoke to Dr.
Doing some
Fontaine.
scholarly stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Good
so
stuff.
that is my goal, and I want to get back into teaching.
Okay.
I really want to get back into teaching, and doing that would also help me get back into teaching. Although I'm still listed as a faculty, but one of the things I want to do is help doctoral students with their dissertation, because of what I went through with mine. I had to drop my mentor and get new mentor and all that stuff. So I know how difficult that journey is, and I want to be able to help doctoral students go through that process.
Where is TC as we speak? Is TC in Japan? Is TC in Dominica? Is TC in St. Croix? And what has TC been up to the last few years?
I have, last few years I've mainly been in business and politics. The same politics that I interestingly left the military for. I jumped right back into it, yeah. So that's what I've been doing, but I'm more in
and interestingly, TC, you know, I actually had no idea that you were involved in politics in Dominica. It's actually when we came here tonight, and then somebody mentioned something about international secretary, and I was like, you realize I wasn't aware, right?
Yeah.
And then I said, what? And then we're learning, but we'll share some of that.
Yeah,
Yes.
so I spend more time here. One of the things that is very fortunate for me, I have a lady running my operation. She's been with me over 20 years.
Okay.
And I sleep well at night. I don't have to worry what's going on. Miss Green.
Based in Dominica?
Antoinette
Oh,
Green.
Miss Green?
Yes.
Okay, I know her.
Yeah,
Yes.
she's been with me a very, very long time. I took, since I was in Portersville, she was with me. And so I don't have to worry about anything. She's more than a manager. She's somebody told me the other day, she's not a manager, she's your PA. She's a manager and your PA, because I don't know what my light bill is, I don't know what my phone bill is, I don't know what my water bill is, I don't know what anything is.
She takes care of
Takes care
everything.
of everything. When I'm not here, she looks after my house.
And when you found that type of person that you can depend on, you're fortunate.
Yes. And that's what I'm telling you. I'm very fortunate to have that kind of person working with me. And so I spend more time here now because I want to be here more.
Okay.
And I have back in Japan, I have reliable people that I can depend on.
I figure as much too, because when you were assisting me, you know.
So I actually, I say, since probably 2018, 2017, after Maria, basically, I started spending more time here than normal. Normally I would come here for about a month or two, but now I'll go to Japan for about 2 to 3 months, between 2 and 4 months in Japan. The rest of the time I'm here.
And sometimes St. Croix?
And St. Croix, I'll spend time in St. Croix.
Is there going to come a time when it's going to be just full time back to Dominica?
I don't think so.
You don't think so?
I like traveling. Traveling is one of the goals that I've always had is I wanted to come home, but I wanted to get to a point where I can say, I can say.
We just looked at the clock and it's like 10 o'clock.
I can say, you know what, I want to go Antigua for the weekend. I want to go Barbados for a week.
And you deserve it. You've worked hard.
Yeah, so I just, that has been my goal. So I don't think I could ever just stay in Dominica. I would always want to go back to Japan, you know. There are places that I want to go. Philippines, I spent a lot of time in the Philippines. Love the Philippines. I don't think I'll make it back to Australia. But I haven't been to Europe and Canada. And those are 2 places that I haven't been. And so I would like to go there. I think everywhere, I'm into Russia either, but I have no desire to go there. But everywhere else I pretty much have been. So my bucket list is Canada and Europe.
And Europe. Yeah. So, and you will do that within what time frame have you given yourself?
My goal is next year.
Next year?
That's my goal.
Okay, awesomeness. Yes, I'm sure you'll make it happen. To see the political aspect that I really was not aware of. I am not even sure how come. Why and how did you get into politics in Dominica, and what role are you playing in politics?
My dad was deep into politics. My dad got involved in politics when he came back. He was one of the original, well, he wasn't a founding member, but he was not the inception from what I gather. But he was a very strong United Workers Party supporter. And so he and Mr. Edison James were very close, Mr. Prevo, all these guys were very close. And so I just kind of, I don't know, for some reason, although we didn't have that kind of rapport, I still was able to look at what he was doing politically and just kind of attach myself to it. So I started I started talking to Mr. James quite a bit, and I don't know the 90s politics because I came in late, but I like the stance and the principles of the United Workers Party, and I always equate that to the Republicans, which some people find strange because the United Workers Party and Republicans both think business-like and has this mentality of people bringing themselves up and people working them to make themselves what they are, not depending on somebody giving them, you know. So I've always liked what the Republicans do. I mean, Reagan was my hero, you know, Thatcher was my hero. So those type of people, and when I see what the United Workers Party, what their mentalities and their thinking was, then I attach myself to them. So I did that, and I supported. Over the years, I've supported them in different with resources and with different resources. But then in 2018, a good friend of mine, Ezekiel Basil, was running for Wesley. And when that happened, well, he had run before, and we were, you know, I was assisting him, but I decided to come on the ground and actually help, try to do my best to help him because it was going to be a tough race. So I became his campaign manager.
Oh.
And so I worked with him throughout the campaign. Unfortunately, we didn't make it, but I stuck with the program. I was then nominated to be the deputy chairman for the Constituency Association. Subsequently, the chairman moved on, and so I took the role of I'm still in the role of chairman for the Constituency Association.
The Wesley Constituency Association?
Yes.
Okay.
2 years ago when we had our convention, the Mr. Basil recommended me as the international secretary, and Dr. Fontaine had it initially, and so after he relinquished, subsequently I was nominated for that position. So, and then this year I was also renominated unopposed for that position.
So you were the international secretary for the United Workers' Party.
Yes.
Alright.
So what I do is I work with the diaspora, and right now we have a very, very strong group in St. Croix. I was there for a few months, and we set up a group in St. Croix that's been very strong. And right now I'm working on setting up a group in Canada.
Okay.
We have a lot
Part
of
of the
supports.
reason why you need to go there?
That would be a good reason. Wait a minute, they need to send me there next year.
Oh my goodness.
So that's my involvement in politics. I always love politics, but I followed American politics, and like I said, the Republicans are strong supporters of the military, and being in the military, I always favored them. But so that's basically what I do in politics. Yeah.
Okay, we're gonna get ready to wrap things up here. In terms of music, what do you like? Let's on a much lighter note now.
Yeah. Funny story. When I was going to PSS, I actually took part in a calypso competition at Carnival.
Oh gosh, what was your calypso name?
Oh, I don't even remember.
You don't remember?
But I bombed.
You you were terrible.
I was terrible. I was terrible. There was a band in Portsmouth named Modules, and people who go way back and remember the Modules. And they were backing me up, and I was trying my best to sing, and they were just looking at me like, what is he doing? But I love music. I've always loved music. I do a little thing with the guitar.
Who are some of your favorites?
I actually don't have favorite singers. I have favorite songs. I like any good song. I like conscious music. The song by Lucky Dube, House of Exile.
Yes.
I love that song. And Bonnie Wailer's protest album, A Scheme of Things. Those two songs are just, I can play those two songs all day long. I love those songs. I love conscious music, but I will listen. There's another interesting story. One of my bosses were leaving when I was in the Navy, and they always give gifts when they're leaving, prank gifts. So he thought it would be very funny to give me this album, and it was an album by the CCR, Clearwater Creedence Revival. And he gave it to me, and I opened it, and I was like, "Oh, I love these guys." And he was like, his face just kind of soured, and he was like, "You're not supposed to like it." I was like, "No, I love CCR." So I like all different kind of music, but I like good songs, you know. There's a time I like compa music, I like zouk, some soca, but I mostly listen to reggae music. That's the music I mostly. When I was growing up, listened to Exile One, a lot of Kadas. When I was growing up, myself and Sky Blue, we were big on Kadas when we were growing up, because we were probably two of the younger guys in the village who could actually speak Patois. A lot of people still wonder why. How did you learn Patois? But Nene was married to a Frenchman, so and who could speak almost no English. But he was Dominican who lived in Guadeloupe all his life. So I learned Patois when I was growing up. I had no choice.
Yeah, no choice.
Yeah, just like I learned Japanese, I had no choice.
Oh gosh, you've not said anything for us, but at least when we're wrapping up, you'll say something. Let's take a little bit of this one. I just had to give you a little piece of one of your favorite songs. We have to touch quickly before we wrap up on the Mount Fuji climbs, the riding of the fastest bullet train from Tokyo, and a couple of those things we must hear about before we wrap up.
Well, Mount Fuji, interestingly, I'm not a big mountain climber or a big nature person, but our group the officers decided that we were going to climb Mount Fuji. So we went to climb Mount Fuji, but it was too windy that day, so we turned around and went back. You're leaving at 3 o'clock in the morning to go there. and you have to climb. It takes you like 4 to 6 hours to climb to get to the summit. But I climbed it once, and it was tough. You know, you have to take aspirin with you because of the height. You have to eat bananas so you don't cramp up, and you really have to, I mean, be fit to do that. But as an officer, you have to be fit anyway.
Yes, of course.
So I climbed it once. Then, as an officer, you have to re-enlist non-commissioned officers. Only officers can re-enlist them. In other words, when they want a new contract to do another 2 or 4 years, only an officer can have them swear in to do that. And they get to choose where they want to swear in. So this guy decided he wanted to swear in at the top of Mount Fuji.
So you have to...
So I have to go climb Mount Fuji again with him to go swear him into...
Are you kidding me? I would say no.
What is worse about that is I climbed Mount Fuji, waited for him at the top. He was coming up with his girlfriend, waited and waited. He started to get late. So I started coming up, and they didn't make it up. So I had to re-enlist them down below because they couldn't make it all the way to the top.
Madness. Absolute madness.
Then my friends from the States come over and they said they want to climb Mount Fuji. So they kept pushing me. So I went with them twice. So I ended up climbing Mount Fuji four times. I could never do it again.
And give me the train story.
Well, I had a friend from here, from Namiko, who came over on business. All the time I was in Japan, I really never rode the bullet train because I drive everywhere. But I wanted to give him the experience of riding the train. So we jumped on the bullet train from Tokyo and went from Tokyo to Kyoto, which was the original capital of Japan. So we went on it. Took a few hours, very interesting ride. You know, if you're 200 and something kilometers an hour, and now for now you leave Tokyo, now for now you're in Kyoto. So that was a good experience, just having done it, you know. So.
TC, from growing up in Cottage, moving to Wesley with Nenen, quitting school in third form at the Portsmouth Secondary School, and your life just took off. Looking back at this very interesting life and all of these experiences, what would you change, if anything, and what are the overall lessons that come from all of this?
One of the things I say I would change, maybe because business is pretty tough, I would probably stay in the military a little longer.
Okay.
Yeah, I would probably, because I was lieutenant commander, I could have made commander. I'm pretty sure I would have made commander. And I always felt that I should have waited, make commander, and then retire. But I look back and I look back as someone who grew up where I grew up in Bottom Wesley, and I see myself flying in military airplanes. And,
my God.
You know, the skipper came to me one time. I remember I landed on the ship, and they said the skipper's looking for you. I said okay, and I went down and went to the ready room, which is where all the officers have their meetings, and the pilots get ready when they go to fly to brief. And the skipper was sitting there. At that time, you could smoke on the ship, and he had a cigarette in his hand. And he looked at me and he said, "Pedro Sir Thomas, aircraft 306 has been in the hangar, and it's been there for over a week, and nobody knows what's wrong with it. And you are not going to bed until you fix that airplane." And that was all he said. And I went down, changed into my coveralls, came back up, and I was up all night, all morning, got the airplane fixed, got it up on the flight deck, got it flying, flew well. And when I think about those things, and I see myself as a lieutenant commander coming from where I am, and you know, going through life and doing the things from carrying bananas. And I said to the guys, there's some guys from the US who come in the military and they complain about how difficult it is. And I tell them, you don't know about difficult life. You don't know what difficult life is. You know, this is easy. People make it complicated, but it's not difficult. So I look back and I want to encourage, I want to encourage the young people. Don't waste your life. You know, don't waste your time. Don't waste your life. there's a lot that you can accomplish. And if you put your mind to something, people used to say to me in the military, why are you guys from the Caribbean so smart? Because a lot of the guys who joined the military from the Caribbean, we did well. So I would encourage you young people, don't waste your life sitting around doing nonsense or turning your life into rubbish. There are things that you can do. Get a goal, get in your mind something you can do, something you want to accomplish. I've always kind of just jumped on things, my being in the military, somebody just talked me into, give me an idea, and I jumped on it. I thought it was a good idea. Becoming an officer, so Admiral just yelled at me for something and wanted to know why I wasn't an officer, and all of a sudden I'm an officer. Becoming backseat qualified to fly in airplanes, getting my doctorate. Those are things that some people plan out their whole life. I didn't do that. As things came up, I just took advantage of what was coming up. And so I think the lesson for me is that people say you can accomplish anything that you set up your mind to. That's not always true, but you can try. And if you don't try, you never know what you can accomplish. So I would encourage young people, go out there, work hard, and put your mind to accomplish things as positive. Treat people right. That's an important thing too. Treat people right. Do right by people, and you never know how far it's going to get you. And so throughout my life, that's what I've tried to do. I've tried to help people, and I think Geoff was a big part of that because I saw how he operated.
Yes.
He had a free hand. He always helped people. He didn't have a problem with giving, and so people say my hand is too open because I'm always trying to help somebody. I'm always trying to do, But I think that's how you go through life. If somebody helps you, then you should help. So I say, pay it forward. You always try to help somebody, and I think if you do that, you enjoy your life and you get the satisfaction out of it. You don't need to get repaid. You get the satisfaction that comes with it.
What can we learn from you, TC?
Well, I think that's it. That you strive to be the best at what you do. That Marine that told me that decades ago, I think what he said was a gem. It's actually true. If you are the best at what you do, then people will treat you differently. You cannot too many people want to be mediocre. They want to just get so far, and they think just by it is enough. There's a saying that some people use in the military when they do something, say, it's good enough for government work. And some people believe that to a certain level, this is good enough, But you have to try. You cannot be perfect, but you have to strive for perfection. And I think that's what I've always done since I went into the military. I went into business. I always try to go one step ahead, one step better. Look at your challenges and figure how you can mitigate problems and then move ahead. And I think if you do that, you can make it in life, and you can be successful.
Someone says to tell him Sapphira said good night, and she said in one of the most trying times for my business, he was the one who encouraged me.
Okay, yeah, that's Sapphira.
Sapphira it is?
Yeah.
Sapphira,
good night,
sorry.
Good night, Sapphira.
Yes.
She's in Antigua.
Yes. There's many awards that you've received as well within the military, even here in Dominica. Let's just highlight a couple and then we wrap things up.
Okay, there are a lot of awards. Some awards you get in the military are what we call unit awards, which the whole unit gets, and since you're in the unit, you get it. But then you get personal awards. You do something like, I think the first Navy Achievement Medal I received was, we were backlogged on a lot of airplanes getting ready for flying, and the guy who was running it was having a lot of problems. So they took him out. I don't want to say they fired him, but they took him out. And they asked me to go in and run that operation. And within a few months, I was able to clear the backlog and get everything back.
So you were good at this.
I don't want to break my shoulder and pat myself too hard on the back, but I was damn good at what I did. I was named the top mechanic out of the outfits many times, and a lot of the mechanics actually came to me for advice.
Okay.
Yeah. So you got an award for that, and then you get, when you do certain things, you run an operation. Like I took this aircraft to sea with the guys, and you get all the flight hours that you're supposed to get. You drop your bombs are dropped on target, then you get a commendation medal. So I've got a couple of those.
Okay.
When you spend so much time at sea, you get a sea service medal. And I've spent out of my 26 years, about 18 years of that was at sea on ships. So get medal for that. And of course, when you retire, you get your meritorious service medal, which cumulates everything that you've actually done.
Oh, so that meritorious service is actually in the military, not in Dominica?
In the military.
In the military.
Yes.
Okay, wonderful.
Yeah.
TC, it has been an amazing pleasure having you here tonight. There was so much to be learned from you, and I think that, you know, again, this program tonight is one that can serve as major inspiration to many. And for those who tuned in late to the program, I encourage you to go on social media, go on our page and check it out from the beginning tomorrow, because it took off from the beginning to the end. And I am truly happy that I had you here on this program tonight, and that I invited you to be here. And I look forward to continuing to hear good things coming from TC, from Dr. McDonald, Thomas. I mean, you're a true inspiration, because to come from what you came from to where you are now is nothing short of phenomenal.
Thank you.
You're a good person, you're a great person, you've done well for yourself, and I think we can only learn from your experiences that you've shared with us here tonight.
I hope so.
Thank you, TC. Final words and we wrap it up.
Yeah. What I would say is pursue your dreams. Nothing is unachievable if you don't try. If you don't try, you don't know if you can achieve it. So if I used to tell the guys from especially the black guys from the US, if I can leave Bottom Wesley and join the US military and become a lieutenant commander, then they can do anything. And I did most of that, well, all of that, without even a college degree per se. So if you aspire to do something, work on it. In business, I mean, I've come a long way in business. I've been in business quite a while. So whether it's in business, in education, you know, if you want to be the best farmer there is, you know, do what you have to do to be the best farmer, the best electrician. Whatever it is your goal is, it doesn't have to be in academia. You don't have to fly airplanes. You don't have to be in the military or be a lieutenant commander. But whatever your aspirations are, work towards that. Motivate yourself. Look for don't, you know, they say if, you know, you can judge a person by the company they keep. Look at the people that you work with. Look at the people that you run with. Look at the people who you know, you associate with. Let it be people who help you along the way. People who can encourage you, who can inspire you, who can encourage you. And if you can do that, I think it will help you along the way. And when you get to where you want to be, or somewhere along that path, mentor somebody else. Take somebody else under your wing and bring them up, so they too can be a beneficiary of the same thing that you've accomplished.
Amazing. Thank you very much to Dr. McDonald Thomas for being with us tonight, gracing us with his presence, experiences, and stories. We are very grateful for that. So that is a wrap on tonight's In the Spotlight radio show. I can give you all a little sipsion that next week's guest, hopefully, should be Mr. Neville Wade from Portsmouth. So let's hope that we can really get this locked down. Today he sent me a WhatsApp saying contemplating. So let's see what happens, but I think he should be another good one if we can get him on next week, Monday. So thank you everyone for tuning into the program. Thank you to the listeners. Thank you to the viewers. Thank you to Q95. I'm just picking up Sherwin, who is always here, ensuring that when I'm done, things are wrapped up, and always ensuring that I'm good to go at the beginning of the show. Thank you to Great Old House. Thank you to Pamplemousse Goodies and Services. Thank you to Josephine Gabriel and the Company Limited. And thank you to Larry. Hey, Larry, good night. Thank you for your support as well. That's a wrap until the next program.